back to the It's Only Food podcast. I appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow, share, and leave a comment down below and let us know how we're doing. Feel free to stalk me on social media. All my links for that are listed down in my profile. Okay, we have a lot to unpack, so let's get started. Last show, episode 1, I was giving you my biography in the culinary industry, kind of telling you who I was so we'd have a frame of reference to go back to in case I ever needed to kind of say who I was, and so everybody would know who I was and why I'm doing this podcast. And we got cut off with time, my own self-imposed time that I put on that episode, which was 15 minutes. This is episode 2, and I'm going to go with 20 minutes now, and we'll see how that works. So I believe that I left off when I was with a certain company in the senior industry here in Minnesota, where I was the director at a building, and then 2 weeks out of the year we were to go to other buildings in the company outside of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, and help out and lend aid and support and training wherever it was needed. We also were paid to go to school. The school was paid for us as well, to go get our certified dietary manager certification and our certification for executive chef with the American Culinary Federation. Now, I did complete the online course in 10 months and got my certified dietary manager degree, which I still carry. And I did the written test for the CEC exam, but the logistics for the practical exam for the CEC exam were crazy. You had to find a place to do the practical exam. You had to bring all your food. You had to bring all the equipment that you were going to use. You wrote your menu, and then you were to provide your own food and equipment for that. And it was a logistical nightmare. I couldn't set up a time to get in to where I needed to take the test. And also the fish course required a lobster. And as we all know, lobster is very expensive, and you need to take a live lobster in with you until you fabricate it for that course. And with the practicing and the actual exam, that would run into a lot of money, which at the time I didn't have. However, that did not stop me from actually doing the job. That was just a thing that our company wanted to have with us, so we could carry that with us to the properties, so it would give us some kind of credentials to be training and lend support. However, I did that for a while, 2 years I think, and then I decided that I would like to actually be a full-time regional chef or regional manager. The company didn't see it that way. They couldn't open up positions for all of us to become regional managers. That's why they were doing it in the model that they were doing it. So I said, okay, no hard feelings. I'm going to go ahead and take off then and find a place that'll hire me as a regional chef, which I did. I got a job with a nursing home chain where I was flying around to Detroit and Milwaukee and Warren, Michigan, Chicago, other places out east. This time I was heading east, not west, and lending support to the staffs out there with that company, doing open houses, doing the catering, a lot of huge marketing events and things like that. But here in the Twin Cities, there was a lot of problems with I believe at the time there were 13 units that I was going to, and each of those units that I would go to had a problem with staffing, or every time I walked in the back door with my backpack to get to work on what I needed to do, I was hearing from one of the people there, hey, we're short-staffed, 2 people called out, we're not going to be able to do it, what are you going to do? So I was doing the tray line, I was doing dishes, I was cooking, I was doing whatever I had to do to get through the day and help out the staff at that certain property. Got a little burned out with that. I don't think that's what a regional manager is supposed to do, or a regional chef is supposed to be doing. I got a little frustrated. I left there to take on 2 other jobs in a 6-month period that had the same issues with the calling out and the people not coming to work and retention and recruitment and that whole thing, which is one of the topics that we are going to drill down on in another podcast. From there, I left to become a float chef with a company that I can proudly say I am still involved with. I am in a different role now, but I took a job as a float chef at this position where I was going to 30 different properties in the Twin Cities and walking in and kicking out meals for about 70, 80 people in 2 or 3 hours after I got there. You're walking in cold to a kitchen you've never worked with, staff you've never worked with, management you've never worked with, residents you've never cooked for, and a kitchen that was totally unfamiliar. You had to find all the equipment. You had to make sure stuff was working right. But I managed to do it. I like to say that I can walk into any kitchen and be cooking in it within an hour. I put my money where my mouth was. Had to prove something to myself as well. But I did it. I did that for 8 months. Now I am a support chef at a unit that is closer to my house. I'm not driving all over the Twin Cities. I'm actually just 9 minutes away from my house. I have a schedule that agrees with what I do. I do a lot of things such as my cooking channel. Now I have this podcast. I work with a private chef company where I cook for private. And I'm also looking at other projects as well, but I have a schedule that I like. It's working out pretty good. And from there, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, to segue into what my next thing is, I want to talk about the senior living industry, something I've got a lot of experience in, a lot of knowledge. I've worked every position from dishwasher to regional chef, doing that in 20 years. I think I know a lot about it. It's something I can talk about without using a net or notes. So a lot of this podcast is going to be dedicated to be talking about the senior living industry, especially the culinary part of it. We are talking about the food industry, and the senior living industry is downstream from that. We share the same challenges that restaurant industry has, and I think I'll just list some off here, and we're going to drill down on all these in other episodes. But the main one, like I said, that I had issues with was staffing, recruiting and retaining employees, and how to deal with people that just decide that they're not going to show up when they're needed to work, because not only does it hurt the staff and cause morale problems, but it doesn't do any good for the client or the customer if the person that you need is not there. We're talking about food safety, special diets. I know in the restaurant industry, there's a lot of people that are wanting vegetarian, organic, gluten-free. We all know about that. In the senior living sector of this industry, we have dysphagia diets, mechanically altered diets, things like that, diabetic, salt-free, inventory management and waste, quality standards, product sourcing, menu planning, and the future of the food industry and what it's going to change and look like with all of us in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. So we're going to start out with the topic, and that is going to be, what is a chef? What is a cook? I've done a little research on this, and it's a very hot topic, very, very triggering topic. You get both sides, get people in the restaurant industry, the food industry, and you've got people that are not in the food industry that get offended or get touchy about what the explanation and the definition of a chef is. There are a ton of different definitions. Everybody's got an opinion about it. That's why we have a comments section. So please, if you have any kind of comment about what I'm talking about, or you're mad about it or offended, or you want to chime in and disagree with me or whatever, that's fine. Please do it. I like to hear and see comments, and I will respond. But we're going to talk about what a chef is and how it pertains to the food service industry in the senior living aspect. All right, my idea of a chef, this is coming from personal experience. I think a chef is someone that writes the menu, creates the recipes, costs out those menus, buys the ingredients for the menus, has to store all the ingredients for that menu, creates the mise en place for all the ingredients, sets the recipe, cooking, and plate presentation for that menu, creates the schedule for the kitchen, sets the work duties, standards, and expectations of the kitchen, and follows up on the documentation of those standards and expectations. The chef has a deep understanding of cooking techniques and methodology. A chef has a very strong attention to detail and is a clean and well-organized professional. A chef has a sense for the business. They can read financial reports, adhere to the department budget, code and invoice, understand food and labor costs, and not only understand how the back of the house runs, but the front of the house as well. This doesn't mean that someone fresh out of culinary school isn't properly trained to do all of this. Experience matters. It just takes time to develop these skills, and sometimes you have very, very strong cooks that work under chefs that pick up all this stuff, and they can do it when the chef's not there. Titles, I've never really believed in titles, but in this industry I think it's kind of that way. You wouldn't be building a bookcase and all of a sudden, hey, I'm a carpenter. You know, there's carpenters will probably be a little bit upset by that. The same goes with these self-proclaimed foodies, that they can make a casserole and have a little dinner party for 5 people, and then they think they're chefs because they did that. If you can walk in, make that casserole 600 times in an 8-hour day, do it right each time, have it taste exactly the same each time, and do that while you're doing 20 other things, feel free to call yourself a chef. But that's off the subject. That's going to be another topic, I have a feeling, because it's something I'm very opinionated about and I feel very strongly about. Now, how does all this fit into senior living? The old business model for senior living used to be, let's take Salisbury steak for instance. That's on the menu today. Here's how it used to be done. Order comes in, you got a case of frozen Salisbury steak pucks. You take those out of the box, you put them on a tray, throw them in the oven, cook them off. While you're doing that, you're boiling water for the powdered mashed potatoes. You're boiling another pot of water for the powdered gravy. And then you're going in the freezer and you're grabbing a case of frozen green beans. You're going in the storeroom and you're grabbing a case of number 10 cans of green beans, and you're bringing those out and heating them up somehow. If you're lucky enough to have a steamer back then, you do it that way, or you do it the old school way where you put them on a pot of boiling water and do it that way. Hopefully the whole time you're seasoning as you go along. Dessert would be frozen pie, taken out of the freezer, cooked off, cut, hit with whipped topping, hopefully cooled off enough by the time service rolls around that it's ready to go out. That's how it used to be done. Nowadays, you have someone in the kitchen that is going to be buying ground beef in bulk. You're going to get the yield for what you need off of the recipe. You're going to take that ground beef and the peppers and the onions and the seasonings. You're going to make informed patties. You're going to sear those off on the grill. You're going to shingle them into a hotel pan. You're going to make your gravy from scratch with a roux or a slurry and a homemade stock. You're going to peel your potatoes. You're going to put those in and cook them in butter, cream cheese, salt and pepper, heavy whipping cream, however you want to do them. Most of the time you're going to be working with a fresh produce. Your green beans are going to come in fresh. You're going to cook those off, blanch them right before service so they're not turning into mush. And then the pie is going to probably be apples that you got somehow made for a pie. They have some pretty good products out there actually that you can go ahead and put into frozen pie dough, top with another frozen pie dough, and then pinch, throw it in the oven, cook it off, and then you go from there. So chefs, they're becoming more prominent in senior living because of the way the demographic is changing and also the expectations. The future of food is changing as well. The clients we are seeing moving into these buildings, and I believe they're intertwined somehow with the future of the way the food is going and also the demographic. Greatest generation, and I don't know how any way other to put this, but the greatest generation is dying off and being replaced by the baby boomer generation. There are a lot of factors coming into play. Factors such as religious or cultural beliefs. Certain religions or cultures aren't allowed to eat certain foods. You're going to have diet restrictions because of health issues. People expect more value out of what they're getting. The media, everybody is much more educated and much more aware of the food industry and how to cook and how things are cooked and what they're supposed to look like because of all the cooking shows in TV and on the internet. Ethical beliefs, people don't like to eat meat because they don't want to see a cow get killed. Food we were raised on will have to play a role in what we need to have for the chefs, because the baby boomers grew up a heck of a lot different than the greatest generation. The greatest generation, from what I've seen in the last 20 years, is meat and potatoes. If you've got meat and potatoes and a good gravy, they're going to eat it, they're going to like it. A casserole, comfort food, things that they're familiar with. I had made a joke one time that most of the guys that I've worked with, the older gentlemen, I mean, if you could make a shoe, as long as it's got gravy or ketchup, they're going to eat it and they're not going to complain. Well, there's our 2-minute warning there. I'll try to rush this here. Anyway, I got an article here in front of me by Rich Hoffman from Edge Express magazine, and I'm just going to paraphrase a lot of the points he made here due to time, but it's a very interesting article. Chefs have the skill set to purchase, break down, and fabricate whole meats and poultry, and using all of the waste, such as skin and bones and trimmed excess, to make stock and stew meats. Stock and sauce made from scratch is higher in nutritional value, lower in sodium, and better tasting than those constructed from pre-made bases. Chefs employ proper cooking techniques such as braising, poaching, roasting, searing, and grilling meats, as opposed to heat and serve methods commonly employed in the past, which we just got done talking about with our Salisbury steak. Having a chef or a staff of chefs is a great marketing tool to use to try to draw clientele in and to move into these buildings. If they see that they've got a chef on the staff, and the chef is out there after each service talking to the residents, seeing how their meal was, using his customer service skills, that is a good marketing tool. And also with the nutritional aspect, it works out really well if they can communicate with the nursing department or the clinical department to help with the diets of some of the people moving in. So it's a fantastic marketing tool as well to have a chef on your staff. Bottom line is, dining in the senior living community is becoming more like dining in a hotel rather than an institution, and having a chef on staff can deliver this with top-notch quality menu options, special dining experiences, and customer service, all at the same time lowering food and labor costs and streamlining the processes in the kitchen. I've seen this happen in the last 10 years. Menus are changing, staffing is changing, expectations are getting better, processes are getting streamlined, and with the menu and the dining options, we're going to talk about this in our next episode, but how we go out to eat in the senior living is changing as well. Not just the food, but how we dine and all the dining options that are out there. But we'll talk about that the next episode. So next up, we will be talking about the future of food in senior dining. You won't want to miss that one. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks a lot for listening to the It's Only Food podcast. Be sure to follow, share, and comment. Thanks again for listening. Take care of yourself, and bye-bye.